Okay. So welcome everybody. I gave you guys like two very long Tosfot to look at. What? Wait, questions? No. Two very long Tosfot. And they're obviously too long. I mean, maybe it's not obvious. But they're too long to go through in class. But does somebody want to give a summary, or let's say a one sentence or two sentence summary of the Tosfos on Tzadi Zion, which is about Amar Rava Rabbanan Bashishi. Anyone want to take a stab at it? I know, Joel, you're happy to take a stab at it, but let's see. Maybe
we should let someone else do it. Let someone else do it.
All right, Yavdi, go for it.
Mine, I think. Wait, let me.
I mean, I don't want you to summarize everything. Yeah? Two sentence summary.
Oh, yeah, I mean to summarize. Okay, with the.
What's his point? I mean to say it like this. What is the point of it? What is his goal? What is he trying to do?
Yeah, Alish has an answer ready.
I just one point, like proving that min b'mino can be batel.
I
mean that's one thing. Which I think
yes.
There.
I'm sorry. I said you're right. I'm sorry. Yes, proving that min b'mino. I would have read that it can be batel. That it's batel right. That it's not that the halacha, or another way to say it, that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, who says it's never batel,
and like Rashi, who paskins,
and not like Rashi, who paskins thank you, and not like Rashi, who paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, we have all these Gemaras. Basically, this is what's basically going on. We have all these Gemaras that say min b'mino are not batel b'mashu, even b'mashu, not batel. No, it's never batel min b'mino, and we have that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and Rashi seems to paskin like that. Or actually, I say seems because there is a Rashi in Avodah Zarah which says the opposite. If you ever stumbled across it, but there is a Rashi where he says that it's not batel, but that's not our topic. But Rashi is paskening like Rabbi Yehuda. So that would mean the halacha nowadays, if we followed like Rashi, would be min b'mino is asur and mashu. And Tosfos is trying to create the halacha, which becomes the halacha as we know it today, which is that it's batel b'rov, midoraita, and midorabanan, it's batel b'shishi. You need shishi. And can somebody give me two examples of where it seems like we paskin, where the Gemara seems to be like Rabbi Yehuda, that it's not batel b'mashu? He brings a couple examples. Two of them come to mind.
as in like why we would paskin like Rabbi Yehuda.
Yeah, two Gemaras that seem to prove that Rabbi Yehuda is the way we paskin. Two examples.
Like Rashi's side, like argue Rashi's
proof.
side.
Yeah, Rashi's proof.
Well, I don't have this up in front of me right now. I can pull it up. I mean, part of it I think also has to do with the fact that Rav paskins like Rabbi Yehuda, which is like not insignificant. The fact that one of the
but I mean examples. So one case is Yayin Nesech.
Oh, right.
There's a case of Yayin Nesech, which seems to say that Yayin Nesech is Asa b'mashu. And what's Rabenu Tom's answer why it's not Asa b'mashu? Because
Rabenu Tom says Yayin Nesech is everyone agrees Yayin Nesech and Tevel are Asa b'mashu, but they say it's like there's specific, those are the exceptions, right? That like Yayin Nesech, it's because of kind of like the chumrah of it's like Isser, and Tevel, it's because of how easy it is to make it not Tevel.
No, so he says, I don't agree. Tosfos says that that Yayin Nesech is a particular case. It's Yayin that was, maybe I'm saying the word wrong. It's not Stam Yayin. It's Yayin that was actually brought on the Mizbeh.
That the chumrah of its Isser of actual Yayin Nesech is why
exactly. That it's actual. That we thought when we read the Gemara, the only way it's a proof that it's been b'mino is because it's like we thought it's just an average Isser. but it's not an average Isser. It's mamish avodah zara, and avodah zara is not batel afilu b'mashu. So that's, but regular yayin nesach or yayin stam yenam would be batel b'rov. It's just talking about dafka that. And what's another example that he brings? Is like chametz b'pesach.
Hametz, yeah.
Exactly. Chametz is not atzur b'mashu, and it's like chametz is like bread, and one pita that's kosher for Pesach, and one pita that's not kosher for Pesach, and it's but atzur b'mashu. Why is atzur b'mashu? It could be min b'mino, it could be batel. He says, but that's a special chumrah by Pesach. So he sort of gets rid of these examples that seem to indicate the halacha is like Rav Yehuda, and creates. So that's why I said it's like a foundational Tosfos, because this is the Tosfos where he creates the halacha of min b'mino being batel b'rov. So that's all I want to say about that Tosfos. That's why I sort of assign it, because like you have to know that Tosfos. There's another Tosfos that I assign, which is in Kuf, on Daf Kuf, and that's there's a Gemara here, and that's talks about B'shekidei and V'silko, right? On Daf Kuf, Amud Aleph. Can somebody give me a one-sentence summary of what he's trying to do there? Alice disappeared, so somebody else.
This is the Rabenu Efraim's opinion about Hanan, which is that Hanan, it's limiting Hanan as we've been talking about it to basar b'chalav, and saying that, right, in other cases we don't have Hanan as we don't have Hanan,
right, exactly.
Shar Issurim.
That Rabenu Efraim says, also the halacha that we paskin in, at least the Shulchan Aruch paskins, that that which we said that there's Hanan, that's only in basar b'chalav and not b'shar Issurim. And this one I would like to read a little bit of it. Does somebody want to start us off? I mean, I don't want to read it all. I just want to read the beginning of it. I can read it, but sometimes it's better if somebody else reads it. Yeah, Yavni, you want to go for it? Okay.
So from the beginning, I can try.
Yeah, b'shekidem.
בשקדם וסילקו, את האיסור, ואם תאמר למה לי שחתיכה של היתר קיבלה טעם מן הנבלה, אפילו לא נתנה טעם נמי, דהה במינה אוסרת בכל דהו. Okay, so this is,
so what's the case? What's the case that we're talking about here?
We're talking about a piece of nevela meat or dag tameh that was, right, so it's a little, it's not entirely clear what happened, but it was somehow, it gave, what's
it's nevela in kosher. Forget about the dag tameh. Nevela in kosher meat.
In kosher meat.
So it's min b'mino, actually.
Right.
It's actually min b'mino, and it's isser. It's not even basar b'chalav. It's isser.
Right. And it's given its isur to,
and it's given its isur. The isser one has made the nevela has made the other piece not kosher, and now Rav is he brought out he uki Rav Amora he got this Amora and uki Rav Amora v'darash kevan shenatan tam b'chaticha, since that chaticha got isser in it. Haticha atzma naaseh nevela v'oseret kol hatichot kulam mipnei shehen mina. The one, it's like a chain reaction. The first one ushers the isser one ushers a regular kosher one, and now the regular kosher one ushers all of them because it's the same min.
Right.
And the Gemara says, well, what if that's crazy? Because like, why did I have to bother saying that? The original one was also its own min. The original one could have ushered all the pieces. I don't need to say that it ushered the other pieces and then the other pieces, and then that one that became usher forbid the other pieces. I mean, the original piece ushered all the pieces because they're all minot. They're all the same thing. So it should be. By the way, the halacha is here going like Rav Yehuda, which we just got through saying is not going to be the way we pass it, but this seems to be going like Rav Yehuda. I mean, it is going like Rav Yehuda. So the Gemara answers b'shekidem v'silko, that you removed the original isser, and therefore that's why the original isser couldn't usher the other ones, because you took it out. So what's the case? Maybe the case is that the simplest way to think about it is that the one piece got usher from the original isser. The one piece got usher from the original isser. So you have the original isser impregnating this other piece, and they're just having a reaction to those two pieces. Now you throw away the original isser, and now some new pieces fall in to the pot and forbid, and this one that got the isser forbids the other ones. And on that, we said if it got tam from the chaticha, from the isser, then it's capable of forbidding the other pieces. So that's what the Gemara says. Ve'im tomar. That's the case.
And then, right.
So pick up from the Tosfos im tomar, the second.
Im tomar, and right. So then the Tosfot are asking sort of the same question that the Gemara itself asked, only now they're asking it on the new situation where you've taken out the piece of Isur. They're saying, why do you still, even in that case, why do you need it to have been Nitinatam? It's min b'mino. We're talking about Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that min b'mino is not batel. Why do you need Nitinatam? You just need any amount. Afilu mashu.
Afilu mashu. It should be that even if a mashu forbids it, why does it have to be that original isser forbid this, impregnated it with tam? Maybe it just impregnated it with a mashu. That should be enough. It becomes usser, and now it should usser the other things.
Right.
So read it inside. V'im tomar.
V'im tomar, lama li, that from there. V'im tomar, lama li shechaticha shel heter kibla טעם מן הנבלה, אפילו לא נתנה טעם נמי, דהה במינה אוסרת בכל דהו.
According to Rabbi Yehuda.
According to Rabbi Yehuda. Which is like, it's reading this like key, right. Anyway, yeah.
It's a good question. Why does it need to tam? It should have just said it gave it mashu. Shouldn't say gave it tam, it should say gave it mashu. Because we're in the world of Rabbi Yehuda.
Right.
So go
I mean, you could say that in the world of Rabbi Yehuda, afilu mashu is noten tam, but we're defining netinat tam as being a larger quantity.
No, mashu in the world of Rabbi Yehuda, mashu is not tam. That's a different category.
Fine.
No, mashu is mashu, and tam is let's say 1 in 60, or it's another amount.
Fine.
It's a valid question.
ואומר רבנו אפרים דהי גופה מצרה בכלשהו, מכל מקום לא אמרינן שתעשה נבלה לאסור כל האחרות, כיוון שהיא עצמה לא נאסרה אלא על ידי כלשהו. So Rabenu Efraim proposes an answer that yes, it's true that something is forbidden in kol-shehu, but that it doesn't become something that then itself will forbid others.
Right. It can go one, if it's mashahu, it can forbid the piece, but the piece then can't forbid other pieces. But if it's tam, says Rabbeinu, says Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda says, but if it's tam that forbids, then that's a different category, then it can go on. So it's a whole big chiddush in Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda has this other kind of unmentioned law that he says that there's like two levels of Isser. One level of Isser is that it is just Asur to eat, and another level of Isser is that it's Aser and Oser. It's Asur and Oser. It's forbidden and it can forbid others. That's his answer, which is a kind of rabbit out of a hat, but it fits perfectly. Then we can answer. I mean, that's like a technical answer. It works out because now we're going to say that's why the Mishnah said noten tam, because if it wouldn't have given tam, then it wouldn't have forbidden the other ones. Okay. So now we get to the interesting part. Go on.
ורבנו אפרים היה אומר מתוך כך, דאפילו כי נתנה בטעם, אין ההיתר נעשה נבלה שיצטרך 60 כנגד כל החתיכה, אלא כנגד האיסור הבלוע. So Rabenu Efraim learns from this fact that there isn't a
There's these
that
three
it's
levels.
not so absolute, that like that the quantity does matter, that like it does matter, even like just the fact that like there's b'mashu doesn't mean it's like entirely oser now nevela, means that if there's enough to be noten tam, that even if it is giving it is like over 1 in 16 and it's giving like a hypothetical flavor to this other chaticha, that new piece that has been infected isn't going to have the strength to oser by its whole mass. Rather, it's going to be oser only according to how much it has absorbed.
Right, but which is crazy if you're thinking about Rav Yehuda, because what does Rav Yehuda care? Rav Yehuda says Mashu is Osir. Right? Rav Yehuda is in the world of Mashu. How is he getting his din from this? This is what I'm interested in. Is how does he get this din? So again, he would say, let's read it again. Rabenu Efraim haya omer mitoch kach da'afilu ki natna batam. Even if it did give tam, in which case it ushers the other pieces. Ein haheter nase nevela shitzarech shishim keneged kol hachatika ela keneged ha'isur habalua. And then we go on. Hilchach l'rav. Hilchach, go on.
hilkach lerav דאמר הכה דמין במינו לא בטל, כשחתיכת ההיתר קיבלה טעם מן הנבלה, חשיב האיסור כאילו הוא בעין, ואוסר את כל החתיכות במשהו.
Let me correct your Hebrew. I mean, you should say ba'ain.
בעין,
Say ba'ayin means it's in your eye. Ba'ain means it's here.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
What's the word? Was that?
Well, that's at least that's the way they say it when I was in yeshiva.
Okay. But is it still ba'ain? Ba'ain is it still the meaning of like visible, or is it not?
Yeah, ba'ain. Ba'ain means visible. Okay. It's not that it's in your eye; it's that it's visible. Like ein haaretz, it sometimes appears in the Torah.
But that's smichut.
Ein haaretz means the color of the land.
But that's smichut.
Yeah, I understand. But
that has to do with the
Joel wants to say something. Joel, you disagree with me?
I know it's the yeshiva's pronunciation. Everyone says be'ain, but be'ain is really just the smichut form. So therefore, it's be'ain haaretz, like the ayin of the aretz. And ayin doesn't mean necessarily in your eye. Ayin means that be'ain is like a metaphorical way of saying it exists, right? Or that it's a discernible or something.
You're saying it should be ba'ayin. Okay.
I think so. That's my take right now.
Well, whatever. To suit me, just say be'ain.
I mean, Hak Yisrael Torahi, so we all say be'ain. It's good. I like it.
Just to suit me. I don't care what anybody else says because it's confusing when I hear it. Ba'ayin. It is not. No, I never heard anybody say that except in this class. I know that other people say it that way in this class, but I never heard it that way. Anyway, again, I just want to wait before we go on any further. We can ask the question now. My question is like this: how is Rabenu Efraim learning what he's learning? How is this hechrachi to say? How is this required to say? In other words, why is it that because there's these three levels, I mean, when I say three levels or two levels, however you want to think about it, because of these two different levels, it's mashu, or that proves that there's no din of Hanan here going on. Well, Joel, you're our answer of last resort. Let's see if somebody else says it. Do you guys think about this question? Like, what is his limit? What's the logic going on here?
I did, and I had an understanding of it, but I'm not sure I can articulate it again. I need to review.
So the way I think about it is like this. Well, I think about it like this by saying, imagine it's like do a thought experiment. Imagine that there was Hanan. Then would the din of Rabenu Tam still make sense if there was Hanan? That's the point. And then he's going to say, no, the din won't make sense if there would be Hanan. Therefore, there must not be Hanan. That's the kind of proof that's going on here. So then the question becomes, why will the din of Rabenu Tam not make sense if there's Hanan? Okay. So now, Joel, given my framework, can you answer the question within my framework?
Because if Hanan mattered, then it wouldn't matter how much had infected it in the first place, right? Because the whole thing is now Isur. So any amount it gives out is Isur, right? But if it maintains the identity of how much it absorbed, then it must matter. Then it must never actually become entirely Isur. And the Isur it absorbed has maintained.
In other words, in the world of Rav Yehuda, once there's a mashu hitting it, it becomes Asur, right? So why doesn't he say? So you should say Hanan there. It became Asur. It should be Hanan. That means the whole thing is Asur. And therefore, it would every part of it would be forbidden. Every part of it would forbid. I wouldn't need to have Netinat Tam there. What is the Netinat Tam functioning as? It's instead of Hanan, because it's like when there's flavor there, then that thing that I've thrown around, the original Isser, is gone from the picture. But since its flavor is there, so that flavor is kind of like Tam Ke'ikr. The Tam, the actual Tam there, is now capable of Asering. But there's no Hanan going on here. It's not really Tam Ki Iker, because Tam Ki Iker would sort of imply that this is. But the point is, the Tam is there, and the Tam functions to forbid, and without the Tam, you would just have Isser, and Isser doesn't create new Isser. So that the idea that Isser doesn't create new Isser is Hanan. I mean, is the opposite of Hanan. Hanan says Isser does create new Isser.
I don't know that it's so hechrech and Rabenu Tam though. That's the thing. It's right, because I mean Rabenu Tam, you just say it's a step function, right? It's like until it is noten tam, it's not Hanan. Once it's noten tam, it becomes Hanan.
But then yeah, right. But well, but
Right.
then
Like, you
why?
could just say,
why
oh,
is
well, then Hanan just doesn't apply to Mashahu, right? That like as opposed to saying Hanan, this is proof that Hanan doesn't apply at all to things that aren't Basar B'chalav. You could just say.
But that's
Okay,
my question.
then
Why
well,
you can say those words, but why shouldn't it apply? That's the point. Why doesn't, we're asking the question essentially, why doesn't Hanan apply in Mashu, according to Rav Yehuda? If Mashu, the idea of Hanan
again,
is
the
that,
argument would seem to be that like even though Rabbi Yehuda agrees that Mashahu is enough to make a thing usher, he doesn't think it actually is significant enough presence to really change the identity of the thing so fundamentally, right? That like Hanan is about this has really, I consider the identity of this to be so strongly Isser that even though I know proportionally the only amount of initial Isser is much lower, I'm going to treat it
but
all
that's
like
contradictory. But that understanding is contradictory to the essence of the idea of Hanan. The essence of the idea of Hanan is that once something becomes usher,
But that's
we view it as entirely usser.
But that's
we
it.
don't continue viewing it by its constituent parts.
But where did
In
that
other words,
idea
if we're
come
still
from?
viewing it in its constituent parts. It's got heter and tam and all the constituent parts. That shows that we're not viewing it as Hanan.
No,
That's
but
the
that's
definition of
I-
Hanan.
that's a
we don't
later.
view
Where
it
did that
right.
definition come from of Hanan?
Because of milk and meat. Because
It came from milk and meat, but that's
we
assuming
don't
that it
view
works.
it as milk and meat. We view it as not their constituent parts, but that everything now became asur.
Right, but it
yes,
comes
but
from
the
the
whole
way
Rabenu
Hanan is
Efraim's
used.
point is that that's why milk and meat is different. Is that it
Right.
literally becomes usher when
Exactly.
they combine, right? That like
Exactly.
that's how he very intuitively gets to that.
Right. I'm just saying. I think it's. I think it is hechrachi. I think this is hechrachi in Rabenu. I mean, unless Rabenu Tam would come and give us a different reason, but essentially the definition of Hanan is anytime you say that something is usher, then that thing is all usher. It's not partial. You don't revert back to its constituent parts. It's all usher.
No, but
So
Rabenu Efraim here is giving a different definition of what the phrase "Chaticha Naset Nevela" means.
No, he's giving exactly that definition. I think.
No, he says he's saying that the phrase "Chaticha Atzma Naset Nevela" as it appears here does not mean that the whole thing. It means that that there's continues to be a presence of like isul, like it is be'ain, because it has infected this other chaticha, but not that the whole piece.
Where do you
I
see
mean, maybe
the-
that's what you're saying.
Where do you
Maybe that's
see
what
that
you're saying.
Hanan is Hanan on this page in the Gemara?
Yeah. חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה. כיוון שנתן
Ah.
טעם בחתיכה, חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה.
Right.
ואוסר את כל
You're right.
החתיכות כולן.
Okay, yeah. חתיכה עצמה נעשה נבלה ואוסרת את כל החתיכות כולן מפני שהן מינה.
Right.
Right.
So that's why it's keeping the meanness, the mean minoness of the original chaticha that is now, the original isul that has now been taking it out, but it's not, it's right, like the new piece allows, like, right, maintains the isul identity with and the min b'mino identity in one place, but it doesn't bring the isul identity into the whole size of it. That's Rabenu Efraim's, like that's, yeah.
Into the size.
That's the next
of it.
bit in the Tosfos.
Right. I didn't quite understand. But the point is, I mean, I think you're right, that the Gemara, when it says Chaticha Atzma Naseh Nevela, according to Rabenu Tam even, well, of course, sorry, according to Rabenu Efraim, it doesn't really mean it became Chaticha Naseh Nevela. It doesn't really mean that, because he's learning Dafka that
as we
it's
use
not
the
a case
phrase
of Hanan.
in the lit, right.
Right. That's you're right. You're right. I agree with you. The Gemara here, is a different kind of Hanan than we would have normally thought, because Rabenu Efraim is saying there is no Hanan here. There's no Hanan in this case, in this instance.
The other way to the other way I think to think about it is like where it talks about it in Basar B'Chalav, it says the חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה וצריך 60 כנגד כל החתיכה ולא סגי בביטול טיפה לחוד. That phrase, you can read it as, this is how חתיכה עצמה נעשית נבלה וצריך 60 כנגד כל החתיכה. That's like a direct result of the definition of חתיכה נעשית נבלה, or it's like an additional fact about the situation.
Right.
It is both נעשית נבלה.
But you see, in this case, since we're in the world of Rav Yehuda and we're in min b'mino, we don't really need to count how much we're measuring against, because a mashahu would be enough.
Right.
But so maybe the Gemara would have said, so, but in other words, it's really, in that sense, it's maybe not a good proof, because maybe the Gemara means it is a chadich, and it became Hanan here. But then maybe could the Gemara mean here that it did become Hanan? And then it doesn't make sense to Rav Yehuda, right? Because why did Rav Yehuda say it needs to get tam? It should become, the point is, it should become Hanan even by Mashu. Unless you say, like Lexi, I think was trying to say, that he holds that Hanan only exists when there's tam. And then you have to still answer why. Still to answer why does he say that? And we don't have a good answer for why. Okay, but let's read a little bit more. Let me read a little bit in the Gemara here. So again, Rabenu Efraim haya omer mitoch kach da'afilu ki natna ba tam ein haheter na'aseh nevela shiyitztarech 60 keneged kol hachaticha ela keneged ha'isser ha'balua, because that's what we care about. We care about the isser balua, the tam that's in it, and not against the whole piece. Hilchach, in other words, it's strange because here you're talking about measuring. Shishim is in the world of not Rav Yehuda. In other words, in the world of not, we're in the world of Rav Yehuda, but now we're saying if it wouldn't be, if we'd be outside of the world of Rav Yehuda, then we only care about the actual tam being there, and that tam, and therefore there's no Hanan. We only care about the actual tam, and therefore you only need to avata the tam and not the whole piece.
You can create the situation though, even for Rabbi Yehuda, by saying that by saying that our second piece, our like isur that got infected, or our heter that got infected by isur is now in like a soup of lomino. Then that's where the
no, but then it wouldn't be else. That's exactly the point. If it would have been pork that infected the nevela. Here's the question: if it would be pork,
no. So you have min b'mino for the
we have pork that infected a kosher piece of meat, and now that kosher piece of meat fell into other kosher pieces of meat. It's not min b'mino.
No, I'm talking about the other situation. I'm talking about the opposite. So you have a nevela that infected the heter, and then that heter goes into a soup of vegetables. So it's not min b'mino in the second step.
Right.
Right.
So then that's the vegetables would only be Usser, says Rabenu Efraim, against the tam, even according to Rabbi Yehuda.
Of the original, against the size of the original nevela, not against the size of it. Yeah.
Because if we would have to go against the whole nevela, then why wouldn't we say the same din by tipa, by a mashu? That's his basic point. Then why wouldn't we say that if we would have to go against the whole haticha in your case with the vegetables, then we should also say we have to go against the whole piece if it was a mashu that became usser. Because again, I'm saying the concept of Hanan is that once the thing became usser, it's all usser. It's not. It's all or nothing. It's not going to be that we dissect it and differentiate its parts. But let me go on. Like he's holding like Rabbi Yehuda. Min hanevela, chashiv ha'isser ki'iluhu ba'enin. The isser is though it's here because the tam is there. Va'oseret kol ha'chatichot b'mashu, and now it can forbid everything in mashu. Aval ki lo natna nevela tam ba, but if it didn't put tam into the heter piece, haita oseret ha'chatichot. Wait, I lost the place.
You missed the low, I think, there, didn't you?
Yeah. Aval ki lo natna hanevela tamba lo haita oseret hatichot mipnei shehen It wouldn't forbid the other ones because they're mina. Shaharei ein tzarich levatel ela ha'isur levad. You only have to forbid the isur levad. V'kevan shelo natnatam b'chaticha, and since it didn't put any flavor in, have ha'isur kamandaleka. The isur is though it's not even here, because it's only a mashu. It was in other words, imagine one molecule, the one molecule that forbid the original piece. But it can't, if it went and forbids another piece, then it's no longer in the first piece. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have a mashahu forbid. If it's usher by mashahu, there's only a mashahu there. An actual mashahu, when Rav Yehuda says a mashahu forbids, he means an actual mashahu. He doesn't mean an invisible mashahu. He doesn't mean a mashahu of a mashahu. So now we don't have the isser here. We just have a mashahu of the isser. That's not called being be'ain or ba'ayin. It's not here at all.
I think that's also relevant for like considering it min b'mino, right? Like we don't, if we have the flavor of the chatichat nevela among chatichot, among kosher chatichot, then that's not min b'mino, arguably, maybe that's the, and therefore like we need this chaticha that got really infected by the original one in order to keep its status.
Why is it not mino? It's a mashu of mino.
Maybe.
Anyway, v'lo have ki'iluhu be'ein, v'lo asar ela haticha rishona. It'll only be forbidden the first one. Again, this is all explaining Rabenu Tam. She'ena heter naaseh isser, because the heter didn't become isser. Because if it would have become isser, then even a mashu would forbid. V'lo asar shar hatichol v'davka gabe tipat chalav amarinan lekaman beperakol basar and tafkuf chet dechaticha atzma naaseh nevela. It's only when it's milk that infects it that we say that now every bit of it is asur. V'tzarich shishim keneged kol hachaticha, and then we would need against everything, and any part of it would be asur. V'lo sagi b'bitul tipa, and lachud. We don't. It's not enough to just mavata the original tipa in the secondary encounter. We have to mavata the whole piece. Mishum de kol chad v'chad ba'apei nafshe, because each one, milk and meat, Bapei nafshe shari are independently they're permitted. V'ki itnahu bahade hadadi, and when they come together, asur, they become asur, and each one becomes asur. Hilchach habasar atzmo naaseh isur v'loke im achal chetzi zayit mibasar v'chetzi zayit michalab. Each of them are forbidden equally, and therefore you need to mevatel against everything. Lekach tzarich berotev shishim levatel kol hachaticha. That's why the rotev has to be enough to mevatel the entire piece, because it's all us. We don't have to just mevatel the milk. Shenafla aleha. Kol hachaticha shenafla aleha. The whole piece that got the milk that fell on it. Tipat chalab. Aval chatichat heter shebalach tam nevela. But a piece of heter that got tam nevela v'neasar v'chazra v'nitna tam berotev. But if it became usher and now it forbids, let's say, other pieces are in their rotev, ein tzarich elashit. Why does he say berotev? Because it's saying min be'eno mino. If the piece now goes into rotev, which is eno mino, now ein tzarich elashishim levatel ha'isur. You only need shishim against the original isur, not against the whole piece. That's like Avni's case of the vegetables. Shenivla b'chaticha ve'ein tzarich shiur shishim shel ota haticha. Okay, we'll stop there. But that's the opinion of Rabenu Efraim that becomes the actual halacha. So this is also a foundational Gemara, really, a foundational Tosfot, where it gives us this din of no Hanan. But it's very strange to me. Doesn't it? It bothers me that we're learning the din of no Hanan from Rabbi Yehuda, who we don't paskin like. Maybe this is only a din of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabenu Tam seemed to be only talking about Rabbi Yehuda. What gives us the right? And maybe even Rabenu Efraim was only talking about. Well, no, he does mention min b'she'eno mino. Right, he extends it to eno mino. But I'm saying Rabenu Tam could have been just talking about Rabbi Yehuda. But I think the point is that we see this principle of what gave the right to Rabenu Tam to say what he said, because he's saying there's no concept of the whole thing becoming usher when Shar Issurim come into it. Only when basar b'chalav comes into it. All right, that's the Gemara. Let's go to the tour. Yeah, let's go to the tour. Sadi Beit. Oh wait, let me just. So we're in Gimel. In Gimel, Lexi, maybe you want to read?
Sure. בהכרח שנאסרה חתיכה מחמת החלב, נעשית כל חתיכה איסור, ואם בשלה עם אחרות, צריך 60 לבטל כולה, אף על פי שאפשר לסחט את החלב הבלוע בה, ולבטל ב-60 בשאר החתיכות, אפילו הכי הכל אסור, שכבר נעשית החתיכה כולה איסור, צריך 60 לבטל כולה, אם יש בכל מה שבגדרה בין מרק ובשר ותבלין 60 לבטלה, מה שבגדר מותר, והיא נשארת באיסורה, ואם מכירה משליכה ואחרות מותרות.
What does he mean by afal pi she'efshar l'sachet hachalav habalua ba?
I think he's saying that even though, like, physically speaking, even if we say that, like, probably the like amount of like the actual halav that is absorbed in this could be like dispersed mostly throughout the rest of the things, and the actual amount of halav that is interacting with this entire pot of meat is only a very small amount. He's just pointing out what it means to treat this entire piece as Isser, as opposed to just, you know, measuring against that chalav, which Lamaisa we're saying, theoretically, you could envision just being spread throughout the entire pot.
Right. Even if we cook the meat in other meat and all the milk came out of it and it's spread, and we're 100% sure that it all came out, it's still going to be Isser. Not because of a doubt, but because even if it did go out, it's still. I don't know that I would say that it actually comes from this idea of like utter confidence that the milk can be entirely expelled. I think he's more just expressing what the distinction is, as in like, even though, yes, like there's actually only this initial amount of chalav that is dispersed throughout the entire pot, we're not treating it as that amount of chalav versus the entire thing of basar. We're saying that this entire piece of basar is now, you know, naset nevela, is an entire thing of Isser, and we have to measure against that. Right? And then we say, if there is shishim against that piece, and you can throw that piece out, then everything else is mutar. It says, afal pi she'efshar l'sachet hachalav habalua ba v'levatel b'shishim. All the milk goes out, and it's batel b'shishim. What he's saying is like this, that what's the din of wool and linen?
I think he's really just saying that, like, again, that if you're imagining this happening and you're imagining the milk coming out of it, that would be easily batal b'shishim in the entire pot. Even though that amount of milk would easily be batal b'shishim in the entirety of what it now exists in, like, nonetheless, we don't actually measure it that way in this scenario. Right.
Yes, that's what he's saying. But he's coming to contradict another possible thought. Wait a second, Joe. Another possible thought. And that thought is what's the din of, why is this not like shatnez? What is the din of shatnez? If you have wool with linen and you remove the wool from the linen or the linen from the wool, the beged is now kosher again. You might have thought that by milk and meat, if you would remove them from one from the other, they would return to their heter status, even though when they're still together, for sure we have Hanan. For sure we have Hanan in the sense that the milk is totally usher, just as the meat is totally usher. Just like by a beged, if you have a huge beged of 10 meters long and only one thread of linen at one end, the other far end is just as forbidden as the end near the linen. The whole beged is forbidden, but the minute you remove it, everything is kosher. So we might have thought that Hanan meant, so I'm saying there's a difference between Efshar Sochto and Hanan. Hanan just says that when they're together, it's all forbidden.
Also, can I just
But
say
we're saying now that not only that, but even when they come apart later, they're still forbidden. And on that point, the Ravid argues.
Right. So, I mean, the Ravid, speaking of the Ravid, this actually gets to your earlier like discomfort with learning out the limitation on Hanan from Rabbi Yehuda, is that the Ravid's argument is that Hanan actually only exists at all for Rabbi Yehuda, right? That like your intuitive discomfort was like, oh,
Right.
learning out this limitation on Hanan from Rabbi Yehuda, when maybe that's specific to him. The Ravid is like, no, the whole idea of Hanan only applies for Rabbi Yehuda, and actually the Chachamim just don't even think Hanan, period. And some people think the Rif thinks that is what the Beit Yosef
So read the Beit Yosef here.
right?
You
So
can skip the beginning. Just start with Perakol Abasar and Gimel.
yeah, the Perakol Basar, Itzmar, Rav Rabbi Fanina, Rabbi Yochanan, Amrei Shar Zachta Sor, Shmuel, Rabbi Shimon, Bar Rabbi Verish Lakish, Amrei Shar Zachta Mutar, Perish Rashi, Shar Zachta Isor.
Now I want to wait a second. I want to pay attention to Perish Rashi because he's quoting Rashi, but notice what Rashi's saying.
Yes. Shar Zachta Isor Shnevla Behater V'Natan Botam V'Asro V'Chazar Ubishel HaHater Hazah Im Hater Acher. שאפשר האיסור הנבלע בזה להיסחט ממנו לחלק בהיתר האחרון, ואין בו כשיעור לאסור את האחרון.
Stop. What is the definition of Efshar l'sochto according to Rashi?
That there's an isser that's been absorbed in a heter, and it's given flavor to it and made it forbidden. And then you cook this with other things, and it's possible for the isser that's been absorbed in the initial piece of heter to be exuded from it and dispersed amongst the other pieces of heter, and there isn't enough of the shear of the initial isser to oser everything else.
Right.
I think that's generally how we've talked about it.
Ve'ein bo kshiur
Right, and again,
et ha'aron.
I think we talked about this when Aaron.
In other words, the milk that comes out is not enough to forbid the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because again, this is how it's connected to Hanan. Right.
But notice what he says. The definition is not that we need to move. He doesn't say anything about we need to mevatel the whole piece. He's just saying the definition of Efshar l'sochto is that do we say the milk comes out? What's the alternative to say?
No. That's not what he's saying. He's
answer my question. What's the alternative?
What's
the alternative? Wait a second. What's the alternative? What is he coming to lafuke?
Again, I think that Rashi, he's just explaining what the lisachot is right now. He's saying this, it's absorbed flavor, right? And we talked about this also already when Aaron and Ellen did the shir on Efshar l'sochto asor, right? And we talked about how there's different opinions, right? There are the opinions that the reason that the initial piece is asur is because we actually are never fully confident that everything has been expelled from it. That like we don't.
That's not what Rashi is saying.
I know.
I'm just focusing on this Rashi. I don't want to give a sheer about. I don't want to talk about every.
I know, but I think it's relevant, right? So we're saying there are those who say that it's not fully expelled, right? And so that we don't feel confident that it's evenly dispersed. And there are those who say no, even if we say with utter confidence that it has all been fully expelled, it has fundamentally changed the identity of this initial piece such that it's not revert. And that is what Rashi seems to be saying. That
no, I don't want. I think you're right. That's not what he's saying here. That may be Rashi's opinion, but it's not what he's saying in these words.
No, I think that because here he's not explaining what the Efshar l'sochto asur or mutter is. He's talking about what the situation of the Efshar l'sochto is. Exactly.
I agree with you. And what is
right? So I'm saying that if that's what he thinks Efshar l'sochto is, then when he says Efshar l'sochto asur,
as opposed to what? And as opposed to what? Lafuke what? So I understood everything you say. I agree with everything. I agree with everything you say. I just don't think that's in the words exactly here. He's going to say, if you go back to the Gemara, he says it in the rest of the Rashis, but that's not the Rashi that the Beit Yosef quotes. The Rashi here, he's just quoting the definition of Efshar l'sochto. And what is it coming? Wait, Joel, you wanted to answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming to say that as opposed to the case where it couldn't actually expel everything, that it permanently maintains some of the...
Exactly. In other words, not Efshar l'sochto would mean that once the milk is in there, it stays in there. It gets stuck in and it doesn't come out. And
But
then
again,
you have and that we do see, by the way, when it says, when it's bolea, when it's asuk with, in the beginning part of the cooking, it absorbs and doesn't come out. It only comes out later. He's saying Efshar l'sochto means, can the milk ever come out? That's what Efshar l'sochto means, without getting into Asur or Mutter. And he's saying Efshar l'sochto means, it means that the milk can come out, that if you cook it, you can force the milk out, and it doesn't get trapped in there. And if it would get trapped in there, that would be kind of good, because then it would never forbid anything else. It would be stuck in there.
Well, no, but I don't think anyone ever argues that it gets fully trapped in there. The question is just like whether we think it can be like mechalek b'shaveh, right? The question is like whether we can actually trust that it gets fully expelled.
I understand.
Equally dispersed.
Because everybody agrees Efshar
I think Rashi is picking up on the language, right? Of, again, the debate is not Efshar l'sochto or Efshar l'sochto. The debate is Efshar l'sochto, if we say that it can be dispersed.
Exactly. Rashi is defining what is Efshar l'sochto. He's not defining Efshar l'sochto asur or Efshar l'sochto mutter. He's just defining Efshar l'sochto. And Efshar l'sochto is that we all agree that you can get the milk out, and it doesn't stay trapped in there. And because of that, and that's why he says, and if it does come out, if you might have thought, then we have a question. Do you just need to mevatel what came out, or do you need to mevatel more than that? That's exactly what he says. At the end, Rashi says, the ain bo kishiur le'asor acharon. Now, the milk on its own, for sure, is not going to forbid it. But maybe it's still forbidden for other reasons, because of the meat. And that's the debate.
Correct. And that's how we also connect this to Hanan.
In other words, when we say Efshar l'sochto, basically he's asking exactly this question of Shatnez. The question of Efshar l'sochto mutter or Efshar l'sochto utter is basar b'chalav like Shatnez or not? Because we all agree that we can separate them, just like we can separate linen and wool. And the question is, when we do separate it, do we have to just move out to the milk that came out? Or do we have to move out to also the original meat? And the one who says Efshar l'sochto asur is saying we have to forbid the original meat. And the one who says mutter says no, we just move out till the chalav. I'm just trying to say what that's what I think is going on, at least in the mind of Rashi. But I agree with everything you said. Okay, let's go on. Upasak harosh.
Upsak harosh, command Amar Yashar Tzilta Asor, B'chem Pasak Harash, B'Torah Debite, B'chem Pasak Rambam, B'Perek Tet, V'Afal Pi Shekatav Harayved, Shelo Amru Chatichat Manas Et Nevela, El Rabbi Yehuda, L'Mach Me'Bernin B'Mino, Aval Adida and Zekayim Alan B'Mino Batel, Lo.
Exactly what you said before. That the Rambam, that the Ravid says no, there's no din of Hanan. Hanan is only by Rabbi Yehuda, because that's what we just learned. It's from it's in the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. The Ravid is learning very sharp, right? He's learning very strictly. Although, yeah, and even when Rabenu Efraim talked about Shar Issurim, talked about if it would be like in Yavdi's case of vegetables, that was also Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda also said din of min ve'eno mino. That could also be Rabbi Yehuda. B'katav Haran.
B'katav Haran, sheyesh omrim shezehu dat harif, shelo katav dechatichat manas et nevela, la'atzrich Rashi or kiyotze ba, l'divrei chachamim, she'omrim b'mino batel. Harei katav she'en zo mechuvar, v'Yerushalmi de'orla have tiyuvta. Right, so the Ran recorded the idea that maybe that some think the Rif also believes that what should I call it, that
like the Ravid,
Hanan only applies to Rabbi Yehuda, but then the Ram was like, but that seems not correct. Yudu v'afram ban katav shalaka v'chati chatifat manas et nevela v'oseret afilu l'divrei chachamim. V'chemret le'ladon l'harvot le'inyan maseh gam harav l'magid katav shekavar hiskimu rov v'mefarshim v'afil l'rabanan chatifat manas et nevela l'asor shishim k'negda. Right, so we have the Ravid explicitly, and some people's interpretation of the Riv who said this only applies to Rabbi Yehuda, but ultimately the majority of people end up saying, no, this concept is noheg even for the Rabbanan.
Right. So we've now developed this halacha now. We've now developed the halacha that we do say Hanan, we don't say Hanan never. We do say Hanan in Basar B'chalav. And we don't paskin like Rav, even though we don't paskin like Rav Yehuda, and we say Min B'mino is Batil Be Rov, Midoraita. All right. I want to go on. Yeah, is it Daled? Yeah, Daled. Just read the beginning of Daled. Would you like to see?
Yeah. Basak Rav Efraim, Dulam Rian of Shar Silk to Asor El Basar B'chalav. Although Shar Issurim could go into Zayit Chalev, Shnivla B'chatifa, Ve'im Bashishim B'chatzlo, Ben Esra, V'alcharkach Pashla Im Achirot, and Tzarich El Shishim Kedei Kazayit Harishon. He has a filo Chatifa Atzma Chozeret Liot Muteret. Right, so Rabenu Efraim said that Shar Silk to Asor is only true about Basar B'chalav, but with other Issurim, in the comparable kind of scenario, once it's cooked with other things, then we say not only can the initial Isser be baseled in the entire mixture, not against the measure of the initial piece it had ussered, but that also even the initial piece can be mutar.
Right, even the initial piece can be mutar, which is really Efshar L'Sochto. That's
Efshar L'Sochto mutar, right?
Right, which like the fun thing is that like the majority of the Sephardi poskim end up like later on, and certainly including the Mechaber, like paskening like Rabenu Efraim vis-a-vis his Hanan take, right? That it's like only the Basar B'chalav, but going after like the Rashba of like that actually doesn't, the same thing isn't true about Efshar L'Sochto Aser, right? That like it's hard to say, that it's basically impossible to say, and I think everyone basically ends up agreeing. You can't say Efshar L'Sochto Mutter and Hanan in the same place, but they do think you can say Efshar L'Sochto Aser, but not Hanan.
Well, what is Rabenu Efraim saying? Rabenu Efraim saying that Efshar, that there's no Hanan and there's Efshar L'Sochto's Mutter. Right, that you're allowed to say.
Right, what Lexi is saying though is you can say.
What I'm saying is that like we paskin like the Rashba, who would say that like in the case of the Chelev, right, then like if that piece falls into other pieces, like you only have to measure against the Chelev for the other pieces, but that initial piece does not become.
You never right. Because the Rashba has a different problem. His problem is maybe there is not Efshar. Maybe Efshar L'Sochto is not really true. Back to my definition of Efshar L'Sochto, whether mutter or aser, he's just saying maybe Efshar L'Sochto doesn't happen. Efshar L'Sochto. It was always a hashash that some of it remained. So therefore the piece remains asur. Although that's not the only reason to forbid the piece. There are other reasons to forbid the piece, which I think the Beit Yosef says, which is like because shame isser alam. Once it's become asur, it's always going to remain. We're not going to allow it to become mutter, even if we got, and that would be Efshar L'Sochto. That would be Efshar L'Sochto asur. In other words, it remains asur. But look at, so anyway, that's Rabenu Efraim, who says that Efshar L'Sochto is mutter. Now read Rabenu Tam.
Rabenu Tam pasak to af b'shar Issurim Efshar L'Sochto Asor. Right, and this is also a bedafka k'shna eslar b'noten tam shelo haya beheter shishim levatel ha'isor shenivla bo aval nesar b'mashu afilo nesar mekamat mino sh'oster b'mashu Rav Yehuda lo nasat kula nevela barnevi arosh v'hiskim ledat Rav Efraim.
Oh, right. So here we see that there's Rabenu Tam, which seems to be saying in Shar Issurim, right? In Shar Issurim, Filo b'Shar Issurim, Efshar L'Sochto Aser, in the sense that there's Hanan here. So yeah, you agree with that? So we're seeing, is that a machloket midoraita or midorabanan? In other words, when Rabenu Tam says when Rabenu Tam says b'Shar Issurim Efshar L'Sochto Aser, is that Ikar Adin, or is that just like some kind of Chumer D'Rabbanan? So it seems like it's a Ikar Adin. It seems like that's like Midoraita. But we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch that he says different. Now I want to read a whole bunch of Beit Yosef, because even though we only have 1 minute to do it. Yeah. Let's read a little bit more of the Beit Yosef, because I want to skip now from the Beit Yosef to, he quotes the Gemara that we read in Rabenu Efraim. I mean, the Tosfot, sorry. The Tosfot that we sort of did inside, he quotes in Dalet. And then at the bottom, it says, Ad Kan Lashano. It's like 3 lines from the bottom, 2 lines from where he starts the Mordechai. You see that? And the 3 lines on the bottom? Lexi, you see that?
Sorry, 3 lines from the bottom of.
Starting with Veherichu Harbe. Is that where you're starting?
Yeah, Veherichu Harbe.
Sorry,
Sorry, we're looking in what? In the Beit Yosef?
I'm in Dalet in the Beit Yosef, very, very end of it, the 3 lines from the bottom of my page, which it says Ad Kan Lashana. And then it says Veherichu Harbe B'davar. The first one on the line by me is Ha'isr. 3rd line from the bottom.
Yeah. Veherichu Harbe B'davar, B'sof Divrei Katvu, Katav Rabenu Yehuda, Dinira, Liri L'Hachmir B'davar, Kivan De'in Raya Brura B'davar.
So wait a second. So he says that we should be machmir. Katav Rabenu Yehuda. Rabenu Yehuda is not Rav Yehuda. Rabenu Yehuda denira l'ri lahachmir b'davar kevan de'ein raya b'ura b'davar. In other words, we have this machlokus between essentially Rabenu Tam and Rabenu Efraim. And it's not clear what the halacha is, so we should be machmir, and hence we should say Hanan b'Shar Issurim. V'ken katav smag. That you should remember. The smag holds, unlike the Tur, the smag holds Hanan b'Shar Issurim. Ein la'asot ma'aseh lahakel k'divrei harav Rabenu Efraim. Nobody should actually follow Rabenu Efraim. Ki kol rabotenu akadmonim cholkim alav. The smak katav the ein hashita muchacha k'divrei Rabenu Efraim. You know, so the smag and the smak and Rabenu Yehuda and Ri all are saying we have to be machmir in this halacha. So now v'amordechai katav the nearly. Go ahead.
Niralulach Rev Lomar b'kol Shar Issurim ne'amar chatifat manas nevela. Miu ayu dafka b'chatifa asma mitam chashivut chatifa v'yisur nikar muvdal hu netat nevela nesra levada ki ech yitzaref shum heter eleh levatel ha'yisur habalu haba ulefichach oseret kulo v'tzarich kedei levatel kol chatifa im ein avruya litkabed u'devar shmiminyan im ein avruya litkabed u'devar shmiminyan aval b'devar lach Kigon Truma B'chulin V'yain B'mayim Devadazara Kigon Rotev B'rotev D'ena Yisor Nikar B'nidal V'en Kran Chashivut Yisor Mitarev Heter Sheni Ima Rishon V'lo Shayach Klal Meimar Katifat Manasit Nevela. Right, so that like the Mordechai makes the distinction of between like Hanan doesn't apply equally to all different kind of physical realities, that it has to do with like a chaticha mamish.
And not
right, where there's something significant to the way that the Isser like interacts with that piece and like changes that piece in a way that it's like muvdal and separate from everything else that it gets mixed into later. Whereas like when it's lach, where like actually yes, whatever was mixed together initially will then just be completely equally dispersed throughout the rest of the lach. He's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to say there is some significance to that initial bit of lach, like it's fully mixed in.
Right. So if you add more lach to it, it'll just get further diluted and it should become mutter. Does this sound like is this a din d'oraita or Rabbanan? You know, it sounds to me, but maybe I'm not sure, but it sounds to me like the Mordechai is basically saying the halacha is really like Rabenu Efraim, but will be, and therefore we can but if it's actually a haticha, then because it's like hashivut, he says the word hashivut. Mitam chashivut haticha. I mean, since when does the Torah have like a concept of chashivut of something? It should be, I think it's like almost like a rabbinic chumrah that he's saying. I mean, I'm not sure, but I think you could say you could argue that the Mordechai is saying that when we say Hanan b'Shar Issurim, it's only in the Rabbanan, and therefore it's only in a chaticha. Or you could say it's essential, because when, in other words, we're never sure if it can actually go out. I don't know. I stick with you're never sure it can actually go out, but by liquids, it mixes better. Anyway, let's go on. I'm just food for thought. Maybe there's a point there that Reb Mordechai holds that it's Rabbanan. V'al pizeh.
Right, al pizeh yitarti ma'aseh shval yadi atkan. Right, so this is the Mordechai just also like, and yes, I act upon, like I lamaisa paskin like this, that lach balach we don't say Hanan.
Go on.
As far as Katva Rashba B'Tarth Ba'it, Ram B'Sov Perkol Basar B'Shem Ravid, Izel Shanav, Zalo Amra Chatichat Manas and Nevela, Ela B'Isor Habalua B'Chaticha, the Kevan Shanatantam, Ve'en Mamash Isor, Ve'en Mamash Isor Zet, Yotze, Mitarev B'Chatifot Achirot, Ela B'Zo, Harehu, Knevela Atzma, Abba Balach, Bunyan behind Umayim B'Mayim, B'Yotze B'Hem. Apapisha Rishon Nesar Mechamat Miuto, Kevan Shenafal Sham Heter B'Nitrabeh, Vatela Isor, Shere Nitarev HaIsor, Legamre Beheter Shenafal Sham Lebesof, Commotion Nitarev Barishon. Nimsa She'ena Isor Me'urav Achshav Beheter HaRishon Bilvad. Masha'en Ken B'Chatifa Shenivla Mi'Isor. V'chen Hadin Yavesh B'Yavesh, Kikon HaMeduma, V'chen B'Mechomatz, V'Shimhachi En Chosrin V'Osrin, El Lefi Chashbon. Adkan. Right. That,
so in other words, by lach and even by grains that mix together, you would say that we saw that also in the Mordechai.
Yeah.
It could be that though. It sounds a little bit more like he's giving an ikar.
Because again, I mean, also the yavish, right? The point is that either with lach balach or yavish b'yavish, and again, various other rishonim and
exactly. We're used to thinking about lach balach and yavish b'yavish, but now we have a third concept, which is lach b'yavish, and we're saying that lach b'yavish.
I mean, like I feel like again, I think we did talk about this when we've talked about the Hanan and Shar before, right? That you have lach balach, yavish b'yavish, and you have balua.
Yeah, we talked about it before. I'm just emphasizing the point that that while in a certain context we might only talk about the yavish b'yavish and lach balach, here we are seeing that really Hanan seems to apply only in lach b'yavish. That's like the most chumrah case. And maybe you could argue that again that the Rashba here is the Rashba? Yeah, it's the Rashba here is a little bit more ikar adin than the Mordechai was. But anyway, go on.
I have never been able to find where we are. Can you describe again where we are?
Well, now we're on page. If you're in my book, we're on page Resh Yud Aleph.
Okay.
And then the first word on the line is the first wide line, first super wide line. Ela lefi cheshbon.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so we're at
the fourth word in, fifth word.
וכתבו שיש אומרים בהפך, שאין אומרים חתיכת מעשת נבלה, אלא כשנפל לך פלח, שנבלל הכל, נעשה גוף אחד, אינמי לך ביבש, כגון חתיכת נבלה, שנתנה טעם בחתיכה שחוטה, וכגון פלח שנבלל בבשר, אבל יבש ביבש, כגון המדומה והמחומץ, שזה בפני עצמו עומד, וזה בפני עצמו עומד, לא.
In other words, we're only going to say Hanan by things that mix properly, but things that are dry, like grain and grain, we don't say Hanan because that you could always add.
Is that they are not mixed into one another, right? That like that minimally everyone seems to agree that yavish b'yavish when it hasn't been cooked, right? There's like it's completely random to say that like there is one apple that's like a tail apple that's gotten mixed into these other apples. They're all sitting there. And somehow that initial apple mixture has some significance if like you poured 60 more apples in there. Like there is no physical relationship between those initial ones that is remotely different than that with the later apples.
Yes. So we're seeing all kinds of different definitions of when to apply this ki'ilu chumrah of Hanan in Shar Issurim. And logics, and there's a logic to it. Maybe when the things remain separate, then we don't have Hanan. But when they really become intertwined, then we do have Hanan. All right, continue on.
וכתב הר"ן שנראה לי לחתיכת מעשית נבלה בבשר בחלב מדאורייתא, לפי שבשעת התערובת הוא שמתחדש האיסור ונעשה כל אחד עצמו של איסור. בשאר איסורים אינו אלא מדבריהם שראוי להשוות אותם לבשר בחלב. וכיוון
Okay, so here's a very important point. So here we see explicitly written that in Shar Issurim it's the Rabbanan, even though it's maybe Rabenu Tam held the Raita, but the Ramban is saying no, it's for sure the Raita only in Basar B'chalav.
Right, the Ran is saying it's only the Raita in Basar B'chalav, and the principle only exists in other things because of Basar B'chalav.
Right. They decided to equate Shar Issurim to Basar B'chalav, so we have like one din, but that's a rabbinic din.
וכיוון דלא החמירו אלא משום ליתא דבשר בחלב, אינו אומרים חתיכת מעשית נבלה, אלא בדברים המתבשלים דומיה דבשר בחלב, דרך בישול after התורה.
So because of this, he's going to say, because of this, he's going to say it has to actually cook. So if you mix two liquids together and they're just cold, then it's not going to be Hanan. But if you mix two liquids together and then you boil it, then it's Hanan. Just like if you would mix milk and meat. I mean, it's an interesting thing. The Ramban seems to be taking as a Devar Pashut that if you mixed like in a blender meat with milk, it wouldn't be Issur D'Oraita because they didn't cook together. You didn't bishul them. Well, that's obvious. That's pretty obvious, actually. Okay. Inami.
Right. Inami Tanan Telcham she'afku derech bishul mishumachi. Right, so he's saying like, yeah, anything where it's mixed in a non-cooking way, this principle doesn't apply.
And that's why, they're dealing with the Gemara. That's why the Gemara is saying that when you mix is meduma, there's a Gemara, I think it was in Shmit, I forget where was that Gemara? But anyway, there's a Gemara or Mishnah, I think even, that says that if you mix together grains, you can add more and it becomes batel later. And they're trying to explain it. And some are saying it's just because that's the normal din. But the Ramban is saying, no, it's because it's not cooked. Because it's not cooked, not because it's separate entities. Aval Harashba.
Aval Harashba katav shnira li'ikran shel dvarim elu masha katav Rav Efraim shalom ru afshar tzach asur el basar b'chalav bilvad. Minatam shamarnu shakol chazar keguf echad shel isur, aval lo b'shar isurim. D'me'ezatam yisur k'shior kula, lo mashi poletet eno plitat isur. Mikomakom modeh Rav Zal b'chaticha shel isur b'chaticha shel nivla me'isur, v'achar kach nafla ota chaticha ktera sheyesh ba kadei shishim lebatla. Afil hachi hi atzma asura.
Because of those reasons that we said. Right. So there's the Rashba says no, we do paskin like Rabenu Efraim, but we don't say that the piece becomes mutter, which is what the Tur said. We say the piece remains usher because he said two different things. He said because it was called an Isser, because we're not sure everything came out, but of a chashash kind of. So that's the Rashba's opinion. Go on. B'tshuvot l'Haramban.
B'tshuvot l'Haramban katir shalom ruchaticha atzman asit nevela. Elav basar b'chalav, kudat Rabenu Efraim.
Let's skip now to the end. Even though there's all kinds of interesting things here, I think it's just important to see. In other words, if you wouldn't read this Beis Yosef and you just have a very superficial understanding of things, you would think that we the people who hold the Shar and Issurim, it means it's in every case of Shar Issurim. And this Beis Yosef is showing us all the different Rishonim that are giving exceptions to this rule in Lach Balach or in mixtures. So now, what is the Beis Yosef Paskin? So you skip to the next page, the next Amud. It says V'le'inyan halacha. In dark letters, it says for the Indian.
כיוון שהרמב"ם והראש מסכימים כדברי הרב אפרים, הכי נקטינן, וכל שכן שהרשב"א והרב מגיד מסכימים כן, ובתשובות לרמב"ם פסק כן, והעיד שכך נוהגים ועושים מעשה. ואף אגב זה הר"ן לא סבר לקבצה בכל מקום, הרי כתב דבשאר איסורין לא אמרין נפתח לעצמן לעשות נבלה, אלא מדרבנן, וכיוון דפלוצה בדרבנן הוא נקטינן לכולה, ונראה לי. Right, so he's like, the Rambam and the Rosh both seem to go like Rabenu Efraim. The Ramban paskined like Rabenu Efraim. The Magi Mishnah did, and the Ran didn't. But like also even then, he still said it was only Doraita with Basar B'chalav. So given that there's this dispute as to whether it applies to Shar Isorin, even just on Durabanan level, we're gonna go Lakula like these
right. Basically he's saying suffix. He's saying it's machlochet the Rabbanan, so we'll be making. All right, let's take a break here. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 20 after. Again, yeah. Press it twice, man. Okay, so Andre and Sarah, are you there, or are you just not putting your video on? You're there. Okay.
I'm here. Yeah. I'm like feeling slightly under the weather, so I am intermittently turning my camera off and just like moving around, but I'm okay.
Okay. All right. No problem. But I won't call on you if you don't want me to.
Either way.
You want to read or?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to find the place. Where's Gimel? Oh, there, Gimel. Okay. Oh no, I'm in the Be'il. Sorry. Let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. Oh, something is wrong there. Shulchan Aruch Tzadi Bet, Halacha Gimel. Okay, so hit it.
כשנעשרה חתיכה מחמד החלב נעשית כל החתיכה איסור, ואם בשלה עם אחרות צריך 60 לבטל כולה, ואם מכירה משליכה ואחרות מותרות, ואם אינה מכירה הרוטב מותר וכל החתיכות אסורות, עם חתיכת איסור ראוי להתכבד.
Right, they're only forbidden the other pieces if it's a ru'ui l'tkabed. So here he's just paskening Hanan, right? In Basar B'chalav.
Yeah.
Look at Zion in the Taz.
Yeah. You want me to keep reading? Yeah,
in Zion in the Taz.
Yeah. אבל בלא בישול אינה אוסרת אפילו בשניהם חמים. ואם אמרו, ולא אמרו בסימן צדי א', סעיף ד', בחם לתוכם דאסור הכל, אלא באיסור מחמד עצמו, מה שאין כן כאן באיסור בלוע. ואף על גב דבסימן ק"ה, סעיף ז', השווה בשר בחלב לאיסור מחמד עצמו, היינו בשר עצמו עם חלב עצמו, כמו שמבואר שם בדבריו.
בדברינו. Now, did you notice what he said here? He said a tremendous, shocking thing here.
Yeah, I found that Joel and I talked about this a lot when we were learning it. Or maybe Jess and I talked about it. It seems very confusing to me. And
he's
like
saying
kind of
that
shocking.
He's saying that it's not an Isser Atzmo, right? He's saying it's not an Isser Atzmo Basar B'chalav. It's an Isser because of Balua. But when we said that it's an Isser Atzmo, when we said about what was Kuf Hey,
it's
the Kata Gavar.
It's when two pieces touch each other.
It's when two pieces touch each other, right?
And those two pieces are a piece of meat and a piece of milk, not a piece of milk meat that touches something. If a piece of milk meat touches something,
backwards to me, because it seems like you might say when the piece of milk meat is created, that's a new thing, and that's Isur Atzmo of Basar.
And milk is not Asur. And milk is not Asur. Milk is not Asur. How can you say it's an Isur Atzmo? It's not an Isur.
Yeah, it seems very right, unless you say that there's this new thing created, and that's the Isur Atzmo. But he can't be saying that. So I don't know. I found this like kind of surprising and strange.
Yeah, it is surprising. I agree with you 100%. It's surprising and strange. Let's read it again. Aval below bishul. So that's the case of Tata Gavar. In other words, there's two pieces that are hot, but it's not bishul. First of all, he's saying that.
Right. That in itself is also very weird.
Because what's he talking about? No, what is he talking about? Im bishul im acherim. He's talking about the second piece. That is actually our point. In other words, the piece that became usher because of mixing of milk and meat doesn't forbid another piece, even if they're both hot. Because it's only balua, even though it's basar b'chalav and it's Hanan, it's only balua. Well, first of all, this makes perfect sense if you say that the whole din is a din. Oh no, this is din deraita. Sorry, this is din deraita. But he's still saying it's balua. It's very strange. Yeah, it's very strange. He's saying it's a din balua, and therefore, if that second piece that became usher because of Hanan touches another piece of meat, but they're just touching and are cooking together, then we don't say it forbids it.
Yeah.
The lo amru b'siman sadi aleph sif dalid b'cham tocham the oser are called ela be'isser machmat atzmo, and this is not an isser atzmo. It's balua. Masha ein kein kan be'isser balua. It's just milk absorbed into the meat. And then he says, even though we said we hishveh over in kufhei basar b'chalav to an isser atzmo, that what we meant over there was just that when milk and meat, which you thought were hetters, they're actually issers when they meet. Okay, it's an interesting opinion. I'm just picking out things that are interesting, that are
right.
that
It
are
just seems strange
weird.
because you would think that the cooking would be the thing that would transform it into a new thing, right? And that,
yeah. We always said that, right? Because what did we say about what about the din of haticha ruya litchabed? Isn't milk and meat isser atzmo there?
Yeah.
There it is. That's a din derabanan. This is a din deraita. It's very interesting. It's a limitation on the din of Hanan. Hanan doesn't really create an isser atzmo, says the Taz. And isser, when we said isser atzmo by haticha ruya litchabed, that was because it's din derabanan. The rabbis can say anything, but midoraita, Hanan doesn't mean that it's isser atzmo, whatever that, it still retains something of the fact that it was a balua, and therefore it doesn't go further. All right, let's go on. Dal, you can keep reading, Sarah.
In the Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah, Dal.
לא בשאר איסורים, כגון כזית חלב שבלה בחתיכה, ואין בה 60 לבטלו, ונאסרה, ואחר כך בישלה עם אחרות, אין צריך אלא 60 כדי כזית חלב. חלב, oh, sure, yeah.
Because we're talking about Shar Issurim.
Right, ואז אפילו חתיכה עצמה חוזרת להיות מותרת.
So here everybody's bothered. What do you mean? So this is just our normal din of Rabenu Efraim. But then he says, "Va'az afilu haticha atzma chozeret liyot muteret," and the Ramah himself doesn't even argue on that. And that seems to be the opinion of Rabenu Efraim fully, but not with the how do you say, the histaigut, the hesitation, the of the Rashba. The Rashba says, no, the piece, we're never really sure that everything went out. It's true that Me'ikar Hadin, he's passing Efshar the Sochto is mutter, B'shar Issurim. So really, it does go out. In other words, like I was explaining, Efshar the Sochto, it goes out. And now what's the din on the piece? Mutter. So that's the way we're paskening. That's the way Rabenu Efraim is paskening. He's paskening like that. The only thing is, the Beis Yosef holds like the Rashba. So how come he didn't say it here? So look at Yud and Yud Aleph. Yud in the Taz. Look at Yud in the Taz.
ואז אפילו חתיכה עצמה וכולי, נראה דכך כתב לפי מה שכתב הטור, דלא אמרינן אפשר לסוחתו אסור בשאר איסורים. ממילא אפשר לסוחתו מותר, והחתיכה עצמה מותרת. ויין לקמן סימן קוף וו, סיף א', כתב להפך מזה, והוא האמת.
והוא האמת. V'hu ha'emet. This is a place for Joel to write down, a place where we don't paskin like the Shulchan Aruch. In other words, he excise this line. This line, he's just sort of like quoting, he got a little bit carried away in his quotation of the Tur. He just wrote one too many lines. But really he does, don't be confused, he does hold like the Rashba, the piece remains Asur. If you Yud Aleph, maybe we can, yeah, look at the Shach and Yud Aleph.
Okay. ואז אפילו חתיכה עצמה חוזרת להיות מותרת. תימה דלקמן ראש סימן קו"ו כתב דחתיכה עצמה עומדת באיסורה אפילו לפי שהאיסור שבה אינו נפלט ממנו לגמרי עד כאן.
Rashba. That's the Rashba. So that's the same question. But listen, he's going to give a very creative answer now.
Yeah. והרב בהגה שם הבין שהם דברים סותרים זה לזה.
Right, the Ramah over there noticed this contradiction and said that he's contradicting himself. Go ahead.
Okay. וכדי שלא יסתרו הדברים זה לזה, כך כתב בפירוש. נראה להישב, דמה שכתב כאן.
Oh, this is sorry. He's quoting the Rash, the Ramah.
Right, he's just quoting the Ramah, right?
Right.
רצון לומר לפי שכתב מקודם גבי בשר בחלב, דאף הרוטב מותר בשישים, מכל מקום חתיכה באיסורה עומדת. דאם היא ראויה להתכבד, ואינו מכירה, אינו בטלה באלף. וקיימלן, דאין כן בשאר איסורים.
No, Kamashmalan. The Kamashmalan. He comes to teach us.
Right, that
the ain came b'shar isurim. Elabati b'rov kishe'ena makirov. Kevan the ain isur machmat atzmo. In other words, when he's saying the isur chozer la'atzmo is muteret, what he means is you don't have a din of haticha ruya litchabed not being batel. When he says it's mutter, it means when it's not eno makiro.
Mm-hmm.
When it means when you don't know which one it is and it's mixed with other pieces, right? Am I correct?
Wait, say that again. I just didn't hear you.
Just a second. The Eino Makiro is the point. When we say it's the Chaticha Choseret Liot Muteret, what we mean is when it's in a mixture of other Chatichot and we don't know which one it is, then it's Choseret to be Muteret. But if we would know which one it is, then it's not Muteret because of the Rashi. Okay. I got to move the thing. Because in Sif Gimel, he said, at the end of Sif Gimel, he says, Kol HaChatichot Asurot im Chatichat HaIsur Uyel Litchabed. He's referring dafka to that. That din of it's all the pieces are asur when it's Uyel Litchabed, I can't identify it. That din doesn't apply. I think it's a beautiful answer, actually. It sounds like a dochak, but I think it's actually a beautiful answer. It is, I mean, it's kind of a docha, again, but it makes sense. He's fitting it in with the previous statement. That din at the end of Sif Gimel doesn't apply in Chaticha, in Shar Issurim. All right, read the Ramah.
ויש אומרים, דאמרינן בכל האיסורים חתיכה נעשית, דבכל האיסורים חתיכה נעשית נבלה, וכן מנהג פשוט, ואין לשנות, ודווקא אם האיסור דבוק בחתיכת היתר, או שהחתיכה כולה...
Okay, wait a second. So let's slow down. First of all, he quotes the Smag and the Smak and the Mordechai that we do say in Shar Issurim. And then, V'kena minha, pashut. And that is the widespread custom. And then he says, V'davka, now he brings the qualifications. So let's go through the qualifications one by one.
So, Isur Davuk is the first one.
Isur Davuk.
Or
what does Isur Davuk mean? He means, he's going into this other Gemara that we didn't learn recently, but we learned in the past, about the piece slightly on the top or not on the top. Isur Davuk means they have a pot, and then you have the Isser, like Chalev, is connected to the piece. The Chalev and the Basar are all connected, and you drop it into a pot of water. So since they're Davuk, we say it became Asur. But if it became Asur...
It doesn't spread around, because it's like really stuck on.
Right.
Okay, or if the whole piece is outside of the sauce when the
drop fell on it and it's totally out, like Tosfot.
Yeah. Well, like the really, right?
Like the re in Tosfot, yeah.
Okay. Aval
Avav.
right. Aval im mikzat hachaticha tocharotav ve'en ha'isur dabuk bo lo amrin an chaticha nasei nevela. So if those two conditions, right? If none of those things are true, then we don't say Hanan.
Right, because he's imagining it in a pot. I mean, right, because that's what has to be hot, right? It has to be cooking. So otherwise it would just be klipa, right? If it would be outside of a pot, it would be hot. So it would be klipa. So when are we talking? It's got to be in a pot. And so now he's asking the question, is it in the rotev? It's not in the rotev? Okay. So these are limitations.
Right. So in the case where we don't have the limitations, or mitzarif kol achdira levatel ha'isur, right? Or okay. Umikol makom yesh la'achmir la'asor oto chaticha v'chol ze b'shar Issurim aval b'basar
But the piece itself will be usher.
Yeah. So even in a case, yeah, where you
even in a case where it's
Hanan,
where
you still have that piece is
right
still
where it's
usher,
partially submerged, and partially out, and the milk falls on it on the unsubmerged part, the piece will be usher, but we don't say Hanan in the sense that we only have to mavatel the drop.
Yeah. V'kol ze b'shar Issurim aval b'basar b'chalav afal pi she'en ha'isur davuk u'miksat chaticha toch harotev amrinan chaticha azman nasei nevela.
So that's Rashi. And
Right.
now he's prosecuting like Rashi. He's saying he's being machmir. He's saying in basar b'chalav, we're going to paskin like Rashi, and we're going to say even if it's partially submerged, and the drop fell on the piece that was out of the part of the piece that was out, then we're going to say Hanan. So he's sort of mixing it up. When it's Isur D'Oraita like basar b'chalav, then we paskin like Rashi. When it's Isur D'Rabbanan, I'm trying to show that when it's Isur D'Rabbanan, then we'll be like Tosfot, we'll be more makil. Like
wait, I thought that was Lee who said that like if it's partially submerged and that's considered submerged, then it needs to be all the way out to be considered.
Oh, no, it's Rashi. Wait, Rashi said that if it's partially submerged, it still has an interaction. And it was Tosfot said, no, mapitom, that's falling into the pot.
Right, okay, fine. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys remember this?
Yeah,
Alish and Andre?
I think it was Rashi. Like I think it was Rashi.
Yeah. No, I just mean, did you see the Gemara? You saw it because we didn't see it. I didn't assign it. But I think you've seen it in the past.
I think we did it last week.
We did it last week?
Yeah, we did Tibet Chalav. We did it's on the Mishnah, the Rashi and the Tosfot.
And you did yeah. Okay, great. Okay. I missed the beginning of class last week. Okay, we go ahead. V'yesh omrim.
V'yesh omrim delo amrina chaticha azman nasei nevela im nitarev ha'isur beheter lach ve'achar kach nitarev
Isur lach beheter lach.
Yeah.
So that's what we saw in the Bet Yosef.
Ve'en tzrichim rak shishim neged ha'isur shanafal v'yesh lismoch al ze b'shar Issurim l'tzorech hefseid gadol aval lo b'basar v'chalav. Ve'im nitarev yavesh v'yavesh.
That's our case of grains.
That's right. Lo amrinam b'shum isur chaticha azman nasei nevela. So in that case, no Hanan at all.
Right. If they're not mixed together. So basically, when do we say Hanan? Only in Lach b'Yavesh. Not in Yavesh b'Yavesh, and not in Lach b'Lach. I mean, behefsed meruba. It has to be a hefsed meruba.
Yeah.
If it's a hefsed mu'at, so you may as well be machmir. If it's a small hefsed, in other words, it's like the person comes to you and says, the chicken got milk on it. What should I do? So how much does chicken cost? 40 shekels? Well, get another chicken. You'll survive. It's good to be, when it's a hefsed mu'etet,
well, that's also only b'shar Issurim, right? Not by basar v'chalav, what the Rama said.
Yeah. You say my example. Well, my example
the
is actually
lach
Rabbanan.
Sorry, yeah, right. Yeah, and that's I don't know about your example.
Yeah, my case was a bad case. Sorry. I just thought that was the first words that came out.
Yeah, and it's also only by lach that we're talking about hefsed meruba.
Yes, I take it back. So what would the case be? It would be
some pork juice falls into my chicken soup, right?
Yeah.
And then I pour that chicken soup into something else, right? Then but now that's my Shabbos meal, and
you don't have to pour it into something else. You pork juice fell into your chicken soup, and now more chicken soup fell in.
Okay, yeah, that also works. Yeah, so
and now more chicken soup fell in. So we're not going to say Hanan as long as you had.
Well, as long as like I need it, I have
If there's
some
no
set. Like it was about to be Shabbos, and it was the only soup I have to serve to my
exactly.
I could do bitul on
Well,
the
my
pork.
case, my case is also interesting because my case is also not an Isser D'oraita because it's chicken. So if milk falls onto your chicken, what would so that's also D'Rabbanan. Would he be lenient there in a Hefsid Merubah? Or do we say that chicken, they hishvu it, it's been equated totally to basar? If it's been equated totally to basar, then we would treat it like basar. Not clear. Actually,
we skipped it in the Beit Yosef, but isn't it that the opinion that Hagot Shriu says that tipat chalav that falls on chicken only needs berov, it doesn't even need tam, right?
Yes. But the question, yes, we did skip it. I actually have it underlined, but I skipped it anyway because I actually have it highlighted. I was going to teach it today, but we didn't have time. But again, is that halacha or not?
Yeah, I don't know, but it could be mitzaref to maybe another opinion potentially if you needed.
The kli, go on for kli. What about a kli, Sarah?
Wait, where are you?
You see where it says kli hanesar mibliat iser. Okay, so you can do hagala on it.
Yeah.
Lo amrinan behadichan nase nevela. If you didn't do hagala, but so what are we? In other words, we'd only have to mevatel the original pork that fell into the pot, and not the whole pot. I have some. Do I have any comments? I have. Het vav. Wait.
So can I just ask a question about that?
Yeah.
How is that consistent with the case of the drop of milk falling on the outside of the pot? Where it seems like we must be saying.
Answer your question. Answer your question.
Something is.
No, what is he talking about here?
Oh, here he's only talking about Shar Issurim.
Right.
Okay, fine. Boring. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a perfect lead into the next halacha. Because he's saying if it's Shar Issurim, then we don't say Hanan. All right. I had some comments. I had some things to look at here, but I think I'll go skip them. But wait a second. Let me just look for a second. Right. The Ber HaGras is exactly what I said about that. It's Rabbanan, that he's like in D'oraita, he's Machmir like Rashi, and in the Rabbanan, and in Shar Issurim, he's Meka like those. That's Ber HaGras 21. All right, let's go on. Let's do Hay. Alice, you want to read?
אוקיי. טיפת חלב שנפלה על הגדירה שאצל האש מבחוץ. אם נפלה כנגד התבשיל, אין צריך אלא 60 כנגד הטיפה שמפעפעת.
מפעפעת לפנים. Right.
אוקיי.
It goes directly in.
והווה כאילו נפלה בתבשיל. אוקיי. Drop of milk which fell on the gdeira, which is an etzela esh, I understand, like on the fire, but it fell on the like the outer side of the gdeira, right? So
why does he say etzela eish? Because it's cooking. He just means to say it's a cooking pot, as opposed to it's sitting on the counter, even if it's hot. If it would be hot on the counter, it'd be a different din. This is mamish boiling up.
So אם נפלה כנגד התבשיל, אין צריך אלא 60 כנגד הטיפה. So if it fell, and I was confused by this. I have to say, I could hardly imagine the situation, but if it's like כנגד התבשיל, means like it fell on the tafshil, or?
It means imagine a cup or a pot that's half full of soup and only half full. My father used to say he doesn't understand why the people ask, is the cup half full or half empty? He says it's full. It's
The
half
food goes
full
up
with
to the blue, right? Like this is
Wait, I'm telling a joke.
Goes up to. This is where the tipa fell.
Exactly. In other words,
here inside.
Ah, got it. Okay, great.
In other words, the cup is the pot is half full, and the tipa fell on the bottom
got
half.
It. Okay.
As opposed to falling on the top half, in which case that would be keneged harikan, the empty part.
Yeah,
but I was just going to say my father's
was perfect.
My father's joke is that the cup is full. It's just full of water and air. There's water and air, but it's full. Anyway, so the bottom part is water, and that's where the drop fell, on the outside of the pot. But if you could like have X-ray vision, we're basically saying that the drop has X-ray vision and it goes through the wall into the sauce in the pot. And therefore, if the sauce in the pot is enough to mavatel it, it's all batel. I mean, this is a big. We skipped a lot of Beit Yosef on this, a lot of different opinions. We're just jumping right to the halacha, but it's a whole big diyun. Is this really true? But this is the halacha as he passed this.
Okay, so if it fell k'negat tafshil, as we said, so we need only shishim against the tipa.
V'im nafla. Go on. V'im nafla b'makom harikan.
ואם נפלה במקום הריקן, והיא מפעפעת בדופן הגדירה, עד סמוך לרוטב כל כך שאין 60 נגד הטיפה, הרי נאסר אותו מקום הגדירה. ואם התבשיל דרך מקום הגדירה שנאסר, הרי יאסור התבשיל. Okay, so, but if it fell onto the empty spot, like the as you said, the half empty part, well,
no, what we say is you imagine the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that it spreads.
Right.
Thank you, Joel. It spreads as far as it could go. In other words, if the drop hit the empty part, we imagine that it spreads as far as it could possibly go. Now, if it spread so far that it spread to be into an area that was 61 times or 60 times its size, the drop size, then the drop would be batel. So then that would be good for us. But we don't know how far it spreads. So we say like this, maybe it's the worst case scenario. Maybe it's spread 59 times itself, but no more. So then it ushered 59 kenegdo. And it should, and we have 59 drops from one drop. One drop went in, one drop of milk hit the side, and now we have 59 drops of milk and meat. Or actually 60, maybe, I don't know, whatever. Approximately 60. But not more.
It's only a drop of milk at this point, right? It's a drop of milk on the kedera, right?
It's a drop of milk, but isn't it hitting balua meat in the...
At this point,
we're going to say later that it's dafka with a pot that's
yashan.
That's
That's
yashan.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it hits the side. You're saying it's still just milk? So then what's the problem? Oh, I see.
We pour it out. That's the problem, is when we pour out.
You're saying it didn't do anything yet. It's just milk there. But the problem is going to be the last words that you just didn't read, which is zet to kanto. This is the solution to the problem. Sheyanichenu, let it cool off. And then lo yigaba, you don't touch it. Ajisenen, and then you can pour it off cold. Because it's just, but the pot will have to be kosher because it's got milk at the top and meat at the bottom. So you can't have a pot like that. You're not allowed to keep pots like that. So you got to kosher the pot. but if you would pour it onto the side where the milk is, then the meat would now come into contact with the milk. Well, you're saying that Joel is saying that the milk is expanding. I'm not so sure about that. Because if it just is expanding, then it should be getting thinner. As the milk spreads, it would be getting thinner. You still don't get it doesn't become more milk than it was. Isn't it only because it came into contact with balua meat?
I think later he's going to say that. I think at this point he hasn't.
Right. Like we get into the question of either like, is it that it's coming into contact with balua meat and that stuff is becoming usher and going to touch it, or is it that's why you would need the shishim time shishim, right? Or it's like that shita only makes sense again when
I skipped over all this is all the bit Yosef.
Right, because you would never need the 3600 if it's like there's nothing to be if it's just milk, right? Because we always say like something can't be made milk status. Like you can't make 60 times the amount of milk just milk.
Exactly, that's what I was saying.
So
therefore,
like,
I'm assuming
for that
balua.
shita, you do need it to be like balua.
Right. I skipped. Well, there's a whole Beit Yosef on it that I wanted to read, which I skipped over about this whole topic, where the Beit Yosef sort of asks a question and gives an answer, which you may not notice that he doesn't even know. He doesn't even notice he's giving an answer. But I won't discuss it today.
It is weird though that because it's only the Ramah who brings in the idea that if it's only like a pre-used pot, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that the Beit Yosef is arguing it.
You don't think so? You think it's that he agrees?
I think it's just the Beit Yosef didn't bother to mention it. It's obvious to him. Or he assumes that it splashes around, and you're cooking it, and even though it's only half full, the side's got something right now because it moves around, because it splashes. I think we saw something like that in the Beit Yosef, but I think he's assuming it. I think the Beit Yosef. I think that the Ramah here is not arguing. Anyway, so read the Ramah, Alish.
ודווקא אם הגדירה ישנה, אבל אם היא חדשה, בכל עניין אין צריך 60 רק כנגד הטיפה שנפלה עליה. כדלקמן סימן צדיק ח' לגבי כך.
Now read Kaf Gimel. Read Kaf Gimel in the Shach.
Okay. Going there.
What is it Gabe Kaf? In Tzadi Chet Gabe Kaf. What did we say about the Kaf? We said that the Kaf, if it's a Kaf Yeshana, then if you took like an old milk spoon and stuck it into meat, then you have to measure against, then when you use this Kaf again, you have to measure against the whole Kaf.
Right.
But if it was a new Kaf, then you stuck it into meat, only a little bit into the meat, you only have to measure against like the amount of meat that it came into contact with, or the right? Because
the amount it was submerged, yeah.
The amount it was submerged, yeah. So he's saying that's the same din here. So now read the Shar.
Okay. ואף על גב דרך אורה,
לא דמי.
לא דמי לכף, דהתם כיוון שהיא חדשה, ונייר אחר כך בהגדרה. אין צריך 60. Okay. So these two cases are not...
Keep going.
Okay, אלא כנגד מה שבלה. אבל הגדרה חשיבה כמו ישנה, שהרי מבשלים בה. עתה בשר ונפל עליה טיפת חלב בשעת בישול. Okay. Shall I go on or shall I?
Yeah, he's saying, he's just saying a simple point here. He's just saying, not a simple point. He's saying a chiddush kind of. If that was he says not the same as the other one because this pot is being cooked right now. So how do you say it's not? It's always yashan. He's saying it's always yashan because kind of like what I said, it's splashing around. It's for sure. It's guaranteed to be yashan because you're cooking in it right now. It's got meat in it, and a milk drop fell on it. It's always going to need 60. So he's disagreeing with this. He's disagreeing with the Ramah. So read on.
מכל מקום, כיוון שאתה בא לאסור דופן הגדירה מחמת הטיפה, על כן צריך לומר שמא בישול אינו מפעפע בכל הכלי. ואם כן, לא פיפע נמי התבשיל למעלה. ואם פיפע למעלה, אם כן, גם הטיפה מתפשטת עד למטה.
So he's saying like this. He's saying, you must answer this kasha, because what did the Ramah? The Ramah would have thought of this kasha, and the Ramah must be holding that in other words, that the food, it's not that it splashes around. In other words, that was my teretz. His theoretical teretz was that maybe the food seeps up the sides. It goes through the walls, and the walls are like made out of a porous material, and so it goes up, up, up to the top. So that's what he was assuming, kind of. That was his assumption. It's always yashan, because the food is going up. He says, no, it can't be like that. It must be that it stays in the bottom half. And why doesn't it seep up? Because if it would seep up, then we should also say that the drop would seep down. And then if the drop seeps down, it'll spread everywhere and even into and it's as though if it fell on the empty part, it's as though it fell on the not empty part. And then it would go into the food and be butter. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, so therefore he's holding that the food doesn't seep up through the walls. And therefore, dafka, it has to be a pat yeshana. And what do we mean by yeshana? We mean that it's been used within the last 24 hours for meat. But if it was sitting on your shelf for 2 days, then it's and presumably the balua is as though it's not there. Okay. Want to read? How are we doing for time? Oh, we're kind of done here. Well, just read just above. Alish.
אוקיי. נהגו העולם לאסור כשנפלה על הדופן שלו כנגד הרוטב. ודווקא כשנפל באותו צד שאינו כנגד האש. כנגד האש מותר, שהאש שורפו ומייבשו.
So wait a second, what does he say? What is this minhag that he's bringing now?
So it's forbidden only when it falls כנגד on the dofen שלו נגד הרוטב, the part which is as you say, like, so from the other side there is not the rotev, right?
So wait, does this disagree with Sif Hay?
It's weird because before we said that it was the place where there was the tafshil, or that's what the word used, right? What was it?
In Sif Hay, he said if it fell against the empty part, just let it cool off. Now right. He's saying if it fell on the empty part.
There's a minhag, right?
The minhag is that not like halacha in Hay. If you read Hay, you would think that if it fell against the thing, just let it cool off. No, don't let it. No, it's usher. What's usher? The food is usher, I guess.
That seems obvious from the Shach in Kafeh, where he says, right, who's it, the Mahari or somebody who says that everyone, but Sinuan, they permit it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So both the Shach and the Taz.
Could it be lasso to pour it out when it's still hot?
I think it's lesor, period, because that he says, but Sinuan, right? If you look at it, he says, Katav nenoagim lehatir al yedei Sinuan, kamosh katav besif hay. So it sounds like here it's like even with Sinun, they're not permitting it. That they just say everything in the pot is a sur.
Right, everything in the pot is a sur, even though, why should it be? Why would it be? So look at Biur Agrat Kaf Tet. The Chayshinan Shema Allah Achar Kaf Pam Achat Retichat Hakadera Loto Miktsas Hakadera Shenesa. Basically, we're worried about splashing around. It fell against the top, and now the top is usher times 60, and now it splashed over there, and it got some more Isser, and we're going to start generating Isser on top of Isser. So, yeah.
The ground's a big cooler there, though, too, right?
Yeah. V'davka k'shakadera migule, aval b'michuseh kol ha'kedera ki'ilu k'neged. He says all that we've been talking about is where there's no lids involved. But when there's a lid, a lid is considered as though it's falling, and that makes the whole pot into Keneged Rotev. And then you get the kula of Keneged Rotev that it's always muffled. And in fact, that becomes the later Seifim, where he talks about falling on the lid. That's also going to be Keneged Rotev. All right, Shekayach, we did. I think we did a lot. We did the Gemara. We did the base, some of the Beis Yosef. We did most of the Shulchan Aruch. So that was a good, good things to remember. Actually, all these things that we have here with the different dinim. Okay, next time is Lexi, right? And
Yeah,
Lexi's going to do
verses out tomorrow.
two short seifim. We're going to do next time. 93.
Yeah, although 93 is a wacky one, so get excited.
Okay, I like wacky.